Hello, welcome to another edition of the OSU Sports Extra podcast. I'm Patrick Prince, joined as always by OSU beat writer Kelly Hines. Why are you smiling at me already? What is that about? You have this look.
I'm just irritated with this kitten right here.
It's a cat thing. Shocker. Okay, so we're coming at you on a Thursday this week. Kelly, before we get into Kansas State, let's look back for a second at a pretty impressive win over Texas. Hello, cat sighting.
I'm just gonna hold her. She's trying to drink out of my water, and I don't want her to.
Yeah, that's just weird. What do you make of the Texas win? Pretty impressive performance. A lot of factors going on there. What do you make of that one?
I think just considering the amount of injuries, going into that game and things that happened during that game, to be able to still continue to make adjustments, especially on defense, that was super impressive to me. And I think it kind of, you're starting to see the identity of this team a little bit. I think it's kind of difficult in non-conference play and then early in conference play, but I think now, near the midpoint of the season, you're seeing like a resiliency factor that you're going to need to be a contender in the Big 12. So I think, a lot of guys played really well on offense and contributed to that, but I was most impressed with the defense being able to handle, all of those injuries and then, rely on a lot of young guys who just don't have as much experience, and to be able to, especially in the fourth quarter, do what they needed to do, to close out that game.
They made Ewers look a little lost, frankly. What do you make of that? I mean, they really shut down that passing game, and yeah, Ewers looked lost.
Yeah, and I think Texas is trying to figure themselves out, and that's part of it. But a big part of that was, Derek Mason knows what he's doing. I mean, he's a really good defensive coordinator, and I think that he really puts his guys in position to succeed. And you're seeing, because some of those guys are so young and inexperienced, they're just really focused on doing what they're supposed to do, and they're not trying to do what the guy next to them is supposed to do. Like, I think they're just very well coached on defense, and I think the defensive line is a type that can cause a lot of problems for you, even if they don't make the tackle, or get a sack. They apply a lot of pressure, and that can definitely put a quarterback, out of sorts for an entire game. And I think you saw a lot of that.
So a lot of newcomers, if you will, sort of kind of filled in. OSU was without a lot of starters. Stephon Johnson is an easy one. He performed very well. Of the newcomers who were kind of thrust into duty, who else impressed you?
Well, Colin Clay is a guy who's, been in the program, but, that was his first start. And that kind of, was a little bit unexpected, just considering, Brennan Evers, has been such a key piece in this defense, and then him deciding to, move on from his college career in preparation for the NFL draft, that kind of opened up a door for Colin Clay, who has, he's torn the ACL on the same knee twice. I mean, that's really difficult to come back from. And, he's transferred and his journey is, it's not been an easy one. So to see him step in, he's obviously played before, but, he played a lot more than he typically would have. And he played really well. I think defensive tackles are so underrated because they just do what they're supposed to do, and they don't always get, the sack or have the tackle, but they hold their own really well, and that allows everyone else, around them to make the play. And I feel like he's a guy with a ton of potential, and that was a really good starting point for that. So he probably was a guy who stood out to me just because he was, one of the defensive guys in a different role.
I'm glad you brought up Evers. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
He only went to Bixby High School, and I've been reading about him for 8 years. And so
that's the problem with reading names for so long and I do that all the time. I'll have read a name like a million times over, and so I think I know how to say it, and I don't. It's just we're newspaper people.
So that's right. So he got extremely unfairly attacked a little bit when he made his announcement that he was going to stop playing college football and sort of focus on the NFL draft. Some of the Twitter nonsense that you saw is just ridiculous. It's kind of the worst part of Twitter, people going after a kid who don't know anything about what's going on. Can you kind of put all that into perspective on what was going on with him and sort of the challenges he's faced and injuries and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, he has gone through things with his football career that like most of us can't even imagine. I mean, he had a literal like bone graft to like repair his shoulder. I mean, like the pain involved in that, not just with the injuries, but the recovery from them. I mean, he's had a lot of issues with his shoulder and never complained about that, never put himself first, like literally sacrificed his body for the team and got to a point that, you know, he was going to have a difficult time performing at a high level the rest of the season, if, you know, being able to play at all because of injury. So, you know, I totally like respect the decision that, you know, if he's not able to, like be at that normal high level, which for him is an elite level, then, you know, that's never going to be a bad decision. Like you have to look out for yourself, but I also think he was looking out for the team, and he probably knew a guy like Colin Clay could step in, and Colin Clay at 100% versus Brandon Evers at, you know, 50%, 20, whatever. Like he knew the right thing to do, and you know, he didn't have to come back for this season. This is, you know, the extra COVID year that he came back for. I think he has 2 degrees. I mean, he's literally like given everything, like, and done everything right. He's like a academic all Big 12 selection. I mean, never caused any problems, literally done everything that you would want a guy to do and like more, because he's performed at such a high level. So to see him, you know, have any amount of criticism, like that's just, I think that's just really unfair, and that's crap. Like, I mean, I remember a few weeks ago, after practice, like he was one of the players they brought, you know, for media interviews, and he had like blood, like he had, you know, something had happened during practice. He had like blood, like just like dripping down his nose, and he's just like, oh, it's just like a normal Tuesday practice. And it's like, yeah, that's just kind of how he was. Like he was very physical, very tough, and you know, I know he's so well respected within the team that like I can't imagine a single teammate being like, oh man, like how selfish of him to do that. Like that, none of that happened. So if everyone who knows him and everyone on the team like supports this decision, like strangers on Twitter like have like no room to say anything about it.
Well said. Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. All right, let's talk about K-State a little bit. Always a tough out, the Wildcats. OSU goes up to Manhattan for a 2:30 kickoff on Fox. Again, Kansas State's always a tough out. How are you seeing that game?
Man, this is another tricky one. This is just a really difficult stretch for OSU. I really thought, you know, before the TCU game, if OSU could just go like 2-2 and it's like next 4 games, that would be really impressive. And honestly, they should have won that TCU game. And
Yeah.
you know, Texas could easily say we should have won, you know, they should have won the OSU game. So I think this is an interesting matchup, because I just feel like Kansas State and Oklahoma State, the similarities with where their programs maybe were like decades ago and where they are now. Like it was something that was brought up Monday. And I remember whenever I was in school, I covered an OSU game at Kansas State. That was in 06, and that was a very different atmosphere than the last time I was up there, which was in 2019. And just what they've been able to do with even though they've had coaching changes, that's obviously different than what OSU has. They've been able to establish a culture and an atmosphere that makes Kansas State that's a difficult place to go play at. But in terms of their personnel, you know, they have some injuries just like everybody else, but they still have a really good running back, just an exceptional rushing attack, and their defense is pretty good. So I think that they are going to be a difficult matchup, but not like impossible. Layla is just popping up here to say hello.
Yep, I see the tail floating
Yeah,
around.
the tail. But I feel like, you know, every team is dealing with similar stuff right now, especially with injuries. You know, they're banged up. OSU, as we know, is very banged up. I do feel like OSU has, if I had to pick who I think would win, I would give OSU the advantage right now, just because I feel like they have so much confidence coming off last week. And I just feel like this is a more well-rounded team, but it's so impossible to predict these games. I would love to see, you know, Adrian Martinez play and see what these teams look like when their quarterbacks are both healthy, but I don't think that there's such a thing as a healthy Big 12 quarterback right now. Everyone is dealing with that, because everyone had to play TCU. I mean, if you go back and look at you know, what TCU's defense, well, Spencer Sanders was banged up going into that, but I don't think that game helped. But TCU's defense, like if you go down the list of the quarterbacks that have gone up against TCU, like they're all so banged up right now.
I'm not sure what made me think of this, but do you think there's any chance Spencer Sanders comes back next year? He's eligible to do so, correct? If he wanted to.
Yeah, he has that additional season, like the COVID year. I don't see that happening. I think that once it gets to the end of this season, he will have pretty much all of the records. He will have accomplished most of the things that he, you know, was hoping to do, you know, and obviously there's so much football left to be played this season. It could go any number of ways, but I feel like he will always be a little bit underappreciated. And I think stuff like that kind of wears on him. Like, he doesn't love doing interviews. I don't blame him. He's been interviewed like going back to like probably his like junior year of high school. I think he's probably ready for that next chapter, like whatever that is for him. I would assume that that's probably the next step for him. And I really like Spencer, and I think that he carries himself with such confidence that is very contagious for the team. And he's such a great leader. Like, he believes that they can beat anybody, so everybody on the team believes that they can beat anybody. And I think he's just maybe undervalued, like, just because, you know, early in his career he had turnovers, or even last season he had turnovers. Like, well, that's going to happen when you play with the style that he plays with. You're going to have things like that happen. But when Mike Gundy calls him a magician in OSU's offense, I mean, he makes things happen that you're not going to see that very often with a quarterback. And I think whoever the starter is next year, it's going to be a big difference, because you can't replace Spencer Sanders. He's just a very unique player with a personality that I think is exactly what you need in a starting quarterback. Just completely fearless, and you know, he's very confident in himself, and that may rub people the wrong way, but I love that about him. I think that he's been exactly what a program like this needs, and it's going to be tough to find someone who has all of those same elements. Like, he's almost like a unicorn in that way.
It's interesting you say some of that, because I feel the same way, that maybe we do take him a little bit for granted, because it just feels like he's been there 10 years. And I know
it does seem like he's been there for a long time, but he's won a lot of games. I mean, I think he's won like 30 games as a starter now. I mean, that's pretty incredible. I don't know how much more you could expect for him, you know, from him with an additional year. Obviously, if he chose to do that, he'd be like, okay, we have everything we need to go win a national championship. Let's go do it. Like, I think, you know, that was obviously a reason that he's, you know, still with the team now. He thought that like this season was an opportunity for that, and things could still happen that way. It's so difficult in the Big 12 to come out with, you know, even fewer than 2 losses. And I love that the Big 12 is so stacked, and just, you know, top to bottom is going to be a challenge, but it makes it difficult in the national conversation to say, okay, well, a 2-loss Big 12 champion, they should compete for a national championship, which I think that they absolutely should. But I think it's just going to be difficult for any team to in any given year to make it through like unscathed. It's just almost impossible.
Yeah, they beat everybody. They beat each other up and just
and that's really what you're seeing now with all of the injuries. And there's no way to avoid that. It's just the defenses in the Big 12 are I think they're underrated, and you're just seeing they're just going through a really difficult time trying to keep everyone healthy. And unfortunately for OSU, having that open date, in week 4, like there's no break for you. And I think that just adds to it. You don't have a chance to fully recover from the previous week. And so you're getting to like midweek of a game week and trying to figure out what your personnel is. And I think what OSU did, last week was so smart, moving Jabbar Muhammad to a safety spot from, it's one of your starting corners, a position that you don't have a lot of depth there either, but you're like, okay, this is a guy who could play that position. So let's go ahead and move him like during a game week. I mean, that's pretty crazy. So I think that worked out well. And then you obviously had Jason Taylor get injured in that game. So safety is an area that they're going to be super banged up, even if you continue to keep Jabbar, at a safety spot. So just everybody is dealing with injuries, and it's part of it. But I hate to see it affect the outcome of games when the matchups are so good, when everyone is remotely near 100%.
Do you know anything about Jason Taylor's availability for this week?
Well, it's a hyperextension with his knee. So I don't know what the recovery is like for that. I'm guessing that's another day-to-day situation. But it definitely looked a lot worse than that at the time when he had a towel on his head, was like being like helped off and taken to the locker room. I was like, oh, that is a guy you cannot lose, Jason Taylor. I mean, he's just such a key piece. Stop it. Had a skirmish here. He's such a key piece to the defense and helping the younger guys along. But I think now that you're past the midway mark of this season, like guys are less inexperienced than they would be, if this were the start of the season.
It looks like you're literally having a cat fight there.
It's fine. Everything's under control. It's fine. Layla does not appreciate my foster kittens existing like at all. So but she doesn't remember that once upon a time she was a foster kitten. So I tried to explain this to her. Haven't really made any progress. I've probably fostered like 1,000 kittens in the 6 years that I've had Layla, and she has not liked any of them. So I don't know why it'd be a surprise to me right now. If we could just like not do this like while I'm taping this podcast, that'd be great. But she doesn't really have a concept.
They don't work on your timetable.
No.
Yeah,
no. I mean, I wanted to do this in the afternoon because they should be napping. Like, go take a nap. Like, I would take a nap if I had time.
Oh, totally.
If I were a cat, I'd sleep all day. It'd be great.
I thought I would have guessed you've had Layla much longer than that. I would not have guessed 6 years. Just feels longer
there. No, Jet and Layla, they're siblings. They turned 6 like in March, and I got them when they were like 3 months old. So yeah, they're like 6.5.
Okay, well, yeah, but they're much older.
They don't look a day over like 1 or 2 though.
Totally.
in cat years, like I'm the same age as them. But I feel like I'm a lot more mature than they are.
Probably so. Probably a little bit, yeah. All right, we'll leave it there for this week. Safe travels to Manhattan, and we'll talk next week.
All right, sounds good.